Memphis once drew crowds for its blues and booming factories, but by 1993 it led the nation in murder, as crack cocaine tore through neighborhoods faster than any legend on Beale Street. Factories shuttered, police ranks thinned, and street corners turned deadly overnight. How did a proud music city descend into America's most violent battleground? The real nightmare decade began long before the body counts made headlines. Beale Street still echoed with the sound of blues, but the city's foundation was quietly eroding. For decades, Memphis thrived on two pillars: a vibrant tourism scene built around its musical legacy, and a powerful manufacturing and distribution sector that kept thousands employed. By the late 1980s, cracks began to show beneath the surface. Factories that once offered steady work, like the sprawling Firestone plant, closed their doors, leaving entire neighborhoods without a path to the middle class. Jobs vanished by the thousands, and the city's unemployment rate climbed steadily, hitting black communities the hardest. As opportunity dried up, families who could afford to leave packed up for the suburbs, draining Memphis's tax base and leaving city services stretched thin. Census data from the era show a sharp rise in poverty, especially in South Memphis and North Memphis, where boarded-up homes and empty lots replaced what were once lively blocks. The city's infrastructure, already aging, fell further into disrepair. Even as tourists flocked to Beale Street and Graceland, many Memphians watched their neighborhoods slide into neglect. The pride of Memphis's musical and industrial past lingered, but for thousands of residents, the promise of prosperity was slipping further out of reach. Crack cocaine didn't just arrive in Memphis, it upended the rules of survival overnight. By 1986, a new kind of street economy took root. Crack was cheap, easy to use, and sold in small doses, $5 or $10 for a high that lasted minutes. Dealers, many barely out of their teens, saw more cash in a single afternoon than their parents could make in a week at the old factories. The math was simple and brutal. In neighborhoods stripped of steady work, selling crack paid better than any warehouse or fast food job still left. Every corner became a contested market. Gangs and crews, some only loosely organized, fought over sidewalks and apartment stairwells. The violence was not about million-dollar shipments. It was about who controlled the block, who got to sell, and who had to run. Arguments over a few dollars or a missed payment turned deadly. The old Memphis code, shaped by neighbors and family ties, got drowned out by the sound of gunfire. Addiction followed the money. Users cycled in and out of abandoned houses, desperate for the next hit, sometimes stealing or dealing themselves just to stay afloat. For many, crack was more than a drug. It became a new reality where the risks were immediate and the rewards, for some, seemed worth it. The city's decline turned volatile, and the streets themselves became the new battleground. Interstate 40 slices across Memphis like a main artery, carrying freight, travelers, and by the late 1980s, an unending flow of drugs. Dealers and traffickers saw opportunity in the city's geography. Memphis sat at the crossroads of America, where East met West and North met South. Trucks loaded with everything from televisions to bananas now moved cocaine and guns alongside legal cargo. The city's long history as a distribution hub, once a strength, had become a liability. When the Firestone tire plant shut down, it was not just a factory closing, it was thousands of paychecks gone in a single blow. The ripple effects spread fast, corner stores shuttered, bus routes were cut, and entire families were forced to scramble for any work left. The economic engine that powered neighborhoods like Fraser and North Memphis sputtered to a stop. For many, the promise of stable work disappeared overnight, replaced by hustles that paid in risk and quick cash. The Memphis Police Department was left to confront this new reality, understaffed. Around 1,000 officers were expected to patrol a city of more than 650,000 people. Veteran cops left for better pay in the suburbs, taking years of experience with them. Morale dropped, response times stretched. In some precincts, officers worked double shifts just to keep up with the calls. A retired sergeant, voice weary even years later, remembered, "We were outnumbered, plain and simple. There were nights we would get 20 or 30 calls stacked up, and you just had to pick which ones you could get to." The city's veins were wide open, and its defenses were stretched thin. The stage was set for a surge in violence, the likes of which Memphis had never seen. By 1990, the numbers on Memphis's homicide charts began to climb at a pace nobody could ignore. That year, the city recorded 211 murders, an all-time high that would soon be left behind. In 1991, the count rose to 223. The next year, 259 people were killed. These were not just statistics. They were the names read at funerals, the faces that vanished from family photos, the reason parents kept their children indoors after sundown. Some neighborhoods became synonymous with loss. In Orange Mound, a murder every 2 weeks was the grim reality. Police reports mapped clusters of violence where street corners once filled with kids on bikes turned into open-air battlegrounds. The violence was relentless and indiscriminate. Shell casings littered playgrounds. Stray bullets punched through bedroom walls. In apartment complexes like Hurt Village and Dixie Homes, the sound of gunfire became as common as car alarms. The most haunting detail was that children were no longer bystanders. Shelby County court records from the era show a sharp rise in juvenile homicide defendants, children as young as 13 facing murder charges. Teachers reported empty desks. Hospital trauma units braced for weekend surges, often treating multiple gunshot wounds from a single drive-by. Criminologist Richard Janikowski, who advised the Memphis Police Department, remembers the disbelief. He said, "You saw the numbers and wondered how a city this size could sustain it, but every year it kept getting worse." He cautioned against reading too much into a single year, but even he could not ignore the trend. By 1993, Memphis had the highest per capita murder rate in America, a city of 650,000 suffering more murders than cities 5 times its size. The crisis had reached its peak, and the cost was measured in bodies. Gunfire echoed through the night in neighborhoods like Orange Mound and Hurt Village, a constant reminder that safety had become a memory. Parents pulled mattresses into hallways hoping to shield their children from stray bullets. Ambulance sirens cut through the darkness, racing toward hospitals already overflowing with gunshot victims. Trauma surgeons at Regional 1 worked double shifts, sometimes treating a dozen shooting cases in a single weekend. Funeral homes struggled to keep up, holding back-to-back services for teenagers, sometimes 3 in one day. Apartment complexes became fortresses. Residents kept their heads down, doors locked, and trusted no one. Police called these places no-go zones, but for families trapped inside, there was nowhere else to run. Fear shaped every routine. Royal Chatman, who mentored at-risk youth, described it simply. He said it was like the OK Corral out there. In 1 week, he lost 3 students to gunfire. For thousands of Memphians, trauma was not a headline, it was daily life. Federal agents landed in Memphis with a mandate: stop the bloodshed by any means necessary. FBI and DEA task forces rolled out sweeping operations, targeting suspected traffickers and gang leaders in coordinated raids. The scale was unprecedented. Hundreds were arrested in a matter of weeks, and indictment counts climbed into the thousands over the next 2 years. Police brass announced new community policing pilots, shifting officers from squad cars to foot patrols in neighborhoods that had not seen a friendly badge in years. The hope was to rebuild trust, but the reality on the ground was more complicated. Critics pointed to mass arrests that swept up entire blocks, leaving families fractured and fueling resentment. Meanwhile, the Memphis Housing Authority began demolition on notorious complexes like Hurt Village and Dixie Homes. Bulldozers tore through brick and concrete, scattering residents across the city. Officials called it progress, but for many, it felt like erasure. Old support networks were gone overnight. Policy moves born of desperation left scars that would not heal quickly. Memphis's murder rate has never returned to its 1993 peak, but the city still ranks among America's most violent. The scars of that nightmare decade shape neighborhoods, policy, and lives today. Recovery remains unfinished, and in Memphis, the line between past crisis and present reality is never far apart.